right. The time is now 12:03, and I see we have about 14 people here in the Zoom room. So thank you everybody for joining us today. We're going to go ahead and begin today's election protection volunteer training. Let me go ahead and get my slides up for you. Okay. Now, can I get like a thumbs up or somebody let me know in the chat that you are able to see these slides? All right, I see some thumbs up. I see somebody's tuning in from the Millennium Falcon. All right. So thank you everybody for joining today's poll monitor training. My name is Mason Graham. I am the policy director for Common Cause New Mexico. You probably received quite a few emails from me, so now you're able to put a face to the name. Right there is my email as well as my cell phone number. So I will be your main contact throughout the entire process, throughout the election season as you do your field trainings. So if you do have any questions or concerns, feel free to give me an email or give me a call or send me a text. I'll make sure that I'll be available to everybody here who's participating in our volunteer program. So this year is starting off strong with some very important things that we need to recognize about the upcoming election. First of all, this is a presidential election. It's going to be a rematch between our current president and the former president. And so we are expecting quite a big turnout for this election. As folks have been following with any of the political news, as we know that there are things like the narrative that the election has been stolen or rigged continues to be very prevalent here in the United States. So that's something that we want to be aware of as well as we are doing our volunteer programming and organizing. This year, we also have races for U.S. Senate and the U.S. House up for election. Here in New Mexico, all 3 congressional House district seats are up for re-election, as well as our 112 state legislators are up for re-election as well. So a pretty big year that we have in front of us. So the goal of our program is, of course, always, and I'll say this a lot, to ensure that our elections remain free, secure, and accessible. So let's go ahead and take a look at our agenda for this morning. First of all, we're going to go over the basics with you. What is election protection? What are the volunteer roles and the rules for voting here in New Mexico? Then we're going to go into how to be a monitor on election day, reporting those incidents, and we'll do a little bit of a demo so you're familiar with the software that we're using and you know what to expect when you're out in the field. We'll talk about our practice scenarios as well. And then we're going to go into next steps, how to sign up for a shift, some resources and supplies that you will receive, and how to plan accordingly for your shift. There'll be a quick recap after that. And then at the end of this call, I would like for folks to do the very, very, very short quiz that we have. This quiz is required in order for you to choose your role and to sign up for a shift. You can do it right here on the call. If you are calling in from your cell phone or you're not able to do the quiz just at this moment, do not worry. We're going to make sure we send you that quiz link at the end, but you will need to complete it before you're able to fully be credentialed into the election protection program. So after today's training, this is what you're going to know. What is election protection? What your role is, answers to common voter questions, how to protect voters and yourself, how to escalate voter issues, and who to ask for help. So let's go ahead and begin with the basics. This is going to be a general overview of what election protection is. So what is election protection? Well, election protection is a program that happens all over the country. There are thousands of individuals, hundreds of national organizations that participate in a coalition to ensure that voters have the information that they need to vote safely and securely on election day. So some of those things that election protection does is making sure voters know their rights and that those rights are respected, helping ensure that every eligible voter who wants to can do so, wants to vote can do so, sorry about that, and the proper procedures are followed at the polling places. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. So what this program does essentially is provide eyes and ears on the ground for a rapid response to our legal team, as well as documenting any issues that you see at the poll. Now, this is the largest nonpartisan voter protection program in the country. There are other programs similar to it. A lot of organizations do their own type of election protection program, but Common Cause, we work with a very large coalition of folks who all have the same goal. Thousands and thousands of volunteers manning our hotline, remote, at home, interacting with voters, making calls, or in the field like you all will be. I want to remind people that we are not affiliated with any federal, state, or local government, though we often collaborate. So think your Secretary of State's office or your county clerk's office, or even the poll workers themselves. You guys are not affiliated with any of those organizations. However, we do take steps to contact all of them so they know that we're out there and they're aware that our program is going on. And besides just Common Cause New Mexico, there are many local partners who do election protection as well as Get Out the Vote program. So if you guys are interested in any additional volunteering opportunities, you may want to look into New Mexico Native Vote, OLE, the Center for Civic Policy, and the ACLU of New Mexico. A little bit about Common Cause. I think most people on this call already know a little bit about us, but we are a nonpartisan 501c3 nonprofit. We are often called a democracy watchdog group, which means that we make sure that our government is transparent, is free, and that elections and democracy are upheld at the highest level. And if you are interested in more information about Common Cause, and especially the work that we do here in New Mexico, there is our URL right down there at the bottom, commoncause.org/New Mexico. Now, the crux of this whole program is our election protection hotline. The hotline is run by the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under law. So it is filled with lawyers, attorneys who are very well versed in election law. There is several numbers that you can use as a volunteer and for just members of the public to use as well to ask questions, regular questions or legal questions about the voting process. So in English, that number is 866-R-VOTE. In Spanish, that number is 888-VE-Y-VOTA. In Arabic, that number is 844-YALLA-US. And in our Asian languages, that's 888-API-VOTE. You'll see these numbers a lot, not just through the slideshow, but in the materials that you will receive as after. So don't feel like you have to memorize these because you will have access to them. So let's go ahead and jump into talking about our field volunteers. So those are our poll monitors and our roving monitors. So let's go ahead and start with talking about what is a poll monitor. Poll monitors are typically outside of polling locations or ballot drop boxes and are there to observe, support, and report things that they see at the poll. So you're observing what's happening, supporting voters by letting them know their rights, and then reporting those interactions. In addition to the hotline that I just showed you a moment ago, we have our own reporting form that you will use on your phone. And that reporting form is part of a much larger picture that we're going to be able to see statewide and even nationally on what's happening on election day. We'll go through that form here in a little bit, but remember that those real-time reports are going to allow us to understand what polling places are struggling, if they're having issues, if those issues are widespread or just local. Your role is going to be very, very important for allowing us to see exactly what's happening on election day. So when you are a poll monitor, remember this: when you are assisting voters, you want to make sure you ensure voters know their rights, answer voters' questions, and you can do that by checking their registration status, helping them with their polling place information, or providing them with some more information or the status of their absentee and mail-in ballot. You can also identify and address larger problems by, of course, reporting them. You can fix those problems in real time if you can. And then, of course, when you are reporting, you want to collect as much data from your conversation as possible. That way we know exactly who you talked to, what the issue was, where it was, the time, et cetera, et cetera. The other part of our field volunteer program is being a roving monitor. It's very similar to being a field monitor, but there are a few changes. First, our roving monitors are roving, they're mobile. So our volunteers are going to be visiting multiple polling places along a route. They're going to be checking for things like ADA compliance, signage, how long the lines are, things like that. So just remember, if you choose to be a roving monitor, you're going to be traveling in your own vehicle or another mode of transportation that's safe and effective. And then you want to check for some of these things. Is the 866 Our Vote sign out and visible? Are the lines long? Are there any voting machines that aren't working? Did the polling place open and close on time? And are there signs of voter intimidation? We'll get into that as well. So any of these issues we want to be reported in a similar tool on your phone. There's a checklist for our roving monitors, and that's going to allow us to see the landscape as you move across these different polling places. And all of these things are in place. They are a little bit different than what our regular poll monitors are checking for. Now let's talk about what's happening here in New Mexico for voters. Now remember, if you live in New Mexico and you are eligible to vote, these are really the only requirements. You must be a US citizen. You must be 18 years or older by election day. So if you're 17 today, you can register to vote. You won't be able to vote in the primary, but you can vote in the general election if you turn 18 between now and that first Tuesday in November. You do have to be a New Mexico resident, but you don't have to have a photo ID. They are still going to ask for identification when you go to vote, but a physical ID with your picture on it is not required at any polling place here in New Mexico. The only reason which you cannot vote in New Mexico is if you are currently incarcerated for a felony conviction. So if you fall under that definition, it is probably going to be pretty hard for you to vote in the first place. But we are going to talk a little bit about some new changes to the law, the voting law in New Mexico, which makes that pretty relevant. So here are a few ways to vote in New Mexico, just as a quick reminder. In person at a polling place is always an effective way to vote during election day or early voting. And remember to tell folks, if they don't know, if they are in that line by 7 p.m. or the closing time on election day, they have a right to vote. So if it's 6:59 and you see voters walking up and hopping in that line, they have a right to vote. What you may see is that when that 7 o'clock time hits, somebody from the polling place will come out and stand at the end of the line to say that it's closed. What you want to do as a monitor is ensure that that is not happening prior to the 7 o'clock cutoff time. Very important. Voting early at an early voting location. This is really great here in New Mexico. We have early voting going on right now already. It's in a two-phase approach. So between now and Saturday, folks can vote early at their county clerk's office, but starting on Saturday to the first Saturday prior to the primary election and the general election, you're able to vote at any polling site in New Mexico early. And of course, remember the absentee ballot rule here in New Mexico is that there is no excuse. So if you prefer to vote absentee from the comfort of your home, by returning it by mail, or you like to do a little bit of research on the people and the issues that are on the ballot, so you need a little bit more time, that absentee ballot is a great option for you. You can return them in person, or you can return them at a designated ballot drop box. You may see folks walking up with little letters in their hand as they go to the polling place. That letter is their absentee ballot. Super easy here in New Mexico. All you do is walk in. There's someone at the very front. You hand them that letter, and they give you your I voted sticker. So there are a few new voting rules and laws that you may or may not know about. These have gone into effect as of last year in a bill that was called House Bill 4. It contained quite a bit of changes to our election rules, but essentially what we want to remember is what I just mentioned about same-day registration. This is a little bit different. Same-day registration is also mandated at all polling locations. So in addition to being able to early vote at all polling locations, during the early voting period as well, if you're not a registered voter, you can register and vote on the same day. That goes for election day also. So you've never registered to vote, you decide, hey, today's the day I'm going to do my civic duty and vote. You can walk in and say, I'm not registered, but I'd like to register and I would like to vote, and they'll take care of you right there. Formerly incarcerated individuals with a previous felony conviction are now eligible to register and vote upon release from custody. There's a process in which folks will go through in order to get their registration when they are released. However, there are some folks who have been released, who have been formerly incarcerated, who were previously unable to vote. Now in New Mexico, they are. So that might be something you hear if somebody was denied the right to vote because something is coming back that they are incarcerated. We want to report that as well because the law has changed. There should be 2 monitored secure ballot drop boxes in every county. As monitors, you're probably not going to see many ballot drop boxes, but this is something that has changed. And a huge first time in the nation change to elections is that here in New Mexico, if you belong to a Native American tribe or pueblo, you can use those tribal government buildings as your mailing address. I think we're all familiar in New Mexico about our streets on those communities, and using a mail-in ballot isn't really effective if you don't have a street number, but now you can do that using the address from a government building. And then with the absentee ballot, you can always request to receive one, and there's no excuse for absentee ballots. So you don't have to be disabled or anything like that in order to get that ballot absentee every time. A big thing that we want to talk about is voter accessibility. This is something that our roving poll monitors are going to need to make sure that they're aware of, because all polling places must be ADA compliant and accessible to all. ADA is the Americans with Disabilities Act. So what that compliance looks like is audio assistance machines. They should be available in every precinct. This is available for people who may not just have a language barrier or a hearing barrier, but folks with literacy barriers as well. We want to make sure that they're able to use these audio assistance machines, and we don't want folks to be overusing this privilege, but we do want to make sure that the people who need it are able to get it. Another thing that we want to consider is if a voter cannot physically enter a polling place because it's not accessible, or they have some safety concerns. Maybe they're an at-risk individual, as we've seen with a lot of people from COVID. So this is something that has continued since the pandemic, which is the ability to receive your ballot in your car. So that is something that folks can request. And as election protection volunteers, we would ask that you assist voters with making sure that they can get that ballot to their car. But like I mentioned, we want to make sure that people are not abusing this privilege and that the people who need it can receive it. This is both of these ADA compliance things that they provide for voters do take time. They also take a little bit of bandwidth for the election officials to fulfill. So just make sure that you're patient with them, because it may not be immediate, but we do want to make sure that they get the accessibility tools that they need. So all voters have the right to access websites for information to register to vote or request an absentee ballot. You can even do that while you're voting. If you're sitting at the ballot and you're filling in circle and you say, hey, I don't know too much about candidate X, Y, and Z. I'm going to Google them real quick. Feel free to do that. Here in New Mexico, you can vote at any polling site. So if you're from Bernalillo, take a quick trip up to Taos and you say, you know what? I don't want to miss out on voting. I'm going to hop in line. You have the right to do that. You can ask election officials for assistance with accessing information about accessible votings or with casting your vote, like I mentioned in the previous slide. Accessible voting machines at any polling site. So it's essentially a voting machine that's a little bit bigger for folks who are wheelchair accessible or just need a little bit more space. You also have the right to cast your ballot in private or fill out your ballot in private. So if you go into the polling place, there's tons of people in there. You say, I don't feel like my choices are very concealed. I'd like to do this in private. Let somebody know at the polling place, a poll worker, and they'll be able to help you with that. You can also have the help of a friend, a family member, a caregiver, a guardian, or a poll worker help you with your vote as well. So think about people who don't have English as their first language. They may have a friend or a family member translate for them. Maybe somebody who is nonverbal may have a caregiver or a guardian help them do their ballot as well, or a poll worker. The only individuals who you cannot have help you with your ballot is going to be somebody who you are employed or contracted by, so someone who helps pay for your salary, and a candidate themselves. If a candidate is in there helping people fill out their ballot, I'm sure it'll be caught right away. But if not, huge no-no. And of course, as I mentioned with the audio machines, blind and visually impaired voters can actually also request an electronically fillable ballot to vote from. And they can do that from the privacy of their own homes. So if somebody is visually impaired or blind, if you have the opportunity to talk to them, you may want to consider letting them know, hey, did you know that you can get an electronic ballot so you can take your time and vote from the privacy of your home? So that is a lot about just the basics of our program. So what we're going to do now is talk a little bit about how to monitor. Now, I just want to let folks know, don't feel like you have to be writing these things down. I am going to provide everyone with the slides at the end of this, and then you'll also receive a number of resources after the training and before you start your first shift. So let's go into talking about poll monitoring. So your role as a poll monitor or a roving monitor means volunteer poll monitors, you're going to be eyes and ears on the ground on election day. Some volunteer poll monitors can also act as translators on site. This is going to be huge for preventing voter suppression and targeting people from immigrant or minority communities. In a state like New Mexico, where we have many different languages, many different cultural backgrounds, this is huge. Remember, as a volunteer, you do not, and we do not want you to work all day. Our shifts are 3 hours long, and we'll have shifts in the morning when they open, in the afternoon, and closing. I would like to highlight that two things. If you would like to be more engaged with voters, think about doing one of the later evening shifts after 3 o'clock when folks are getting off of work. That's typically when we see the highest influx of voters, and we'll definitely need people to be out there who are comfortable talking with people and handling those issues. Those people in the morning are also super important also to make sure that the polling places are opening on time, the flow of voters is correct, and then things like the electioneering line and stuff like that, campaigning outside of the 100 feet is maintained. If you choose to do a shift in the afternoon, think between 11:30 and 3:30, still a great time to do the shift. If you consider doing the early vote, not early voting, but for the primary, it's hot in the afternoon. So we want to make sure that you wear sunscreen, a hat, bring a water bottle, all that. In November, it's not uncommon for it to be hot in New Mexico. So think about that. We do want our poll monitors to remain at a single polling place unless reassigned. But if you want to take on multiple shifts at different polling places, you can do so. But just make sure during your shift, you stay at the one polling place. Now, there are a couple of lines and distances that you need to be aware of. First, all of our poll monitors and our volunteers need to remain no less than 50 feet from the polling place. Within that 50 feet, you cannot engage with voters. You just want to make sure that you stay a good amount of distance from the polling place. Now, the electioneering zone, which is where people usually you see the signs, people doing campaigning for candidates, maybe handing out flyers and leaflets, is at 100 feet. So when you show up to a polling place, if you're trying to gauge where the 50 and the 100 feet is, the last campaign sign that you see for candidate B, C, and D is where that 100 feet is. Maybe position yourself 50 feet from there. Sometimes that 50 to 100 feet can reach out to the street. We still want to honor the 50 feet rule. So if it does go out to the street, just make sure you find yourself a safe place, like on the sidewalk, that you can remain, but still accessible to voters. If you do feel comfortable, though, you can go ahead and go inside of the polling place and introduce yourself to the presiding judge or the poll workers there. You just want to say, I'm a nonpartisan volunteer with a nonpartisan organization. We are providing voters assistance with information and resources. I am no less than 50 feet from the polling place. I just wanted you to know that I'll be here between now and now. They should be very aware of our program. The Secretary of States and county clerks are aware that we are going to be out there. But that is something, if you feel comfortable doing, it may provide a little bit more calm on election day. Now, when you are a poll monitor, these are the things that you can do. You can communicate with voters outside the polls, help voters with questions regarding the registration, voting, dropping off a ballot. We'll give you a handy fact sheet that'll help you answer that. If you feel like you can't answer that, you can always use the 866-R-VOTE hotline number, so you can provide it to voters, or you can call that number yourself. You'll get a lawyer or an election professional, legal professional on the other line, and say, hey, I have a voter here who's wondering, she doesn't have an ID, can she vote? All of our poll monitors are going to be required to track these incidents at the polls. Think about some things that you might see yourself, but also things that you might hear from other voters. So maybe a voter comes out and they say, man, it's getting crazy in there. You might want to ask some more discovery questions as to what they mean by that. You can give out nonpartisan voters' rights informations, but we want to make sure we honor that 100-foot rule for electioneering just to cover all of our bases. So we'll provide you with things like the fact sheets. And if you want to say, hey, we have a great handy fact sheet, print out like 20 or 25 of them and hand them out to voters. We just want to keep you within that 100-foot line. Now, I do see a question here in the chat. I just want to answer this quick. If we have time, we will do a Q&A at the end. Now, the question says, if we are to stay outside of the electioneering zone, 100 feet, how does this square with the 50 feet? So I think what you're asking is, if you decide to stay at the 100 feet, I'm sorry, maybe I don't quite understand. David, if you want to come off and ask.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mason. My question is that we are told we have to stay outside of the electioneering zone. That's 100 feet. But then we have to be 50 feet away from the door. And that seems like that's inside the 100 feet. So I'm a little confused about that.
Yes. Thanks, David. That is a little confusing. So our voters, and we've confirmed this with the Secretary of State and the county clerk, is that 50 feet line is where volunteers can interact with voters. At the 100-foot line is where people who are part of campaigns will interact with voters. Since everybody who is here is part of this nonpartisan program, you can be 50 feet from the door. We want people who are participating in campaigns and electioneering to remain 100 feet away. Now, I talk about the 50-foot and the 100-foot lines in this presentation because maybe some people are more comfortable with the 100-foot line. You may also get a request from the presiding judge if you do introduce yourself, or they come out and say, hey, we want you to be 100 feet away. Though we know the rule is 50 feet, we want to comply with that request. Let's not create any friction that's unnecessary. And if you decide, I have a ton of like really helpful materials for voters with the 866-R-VOTE number, just frequently asked questions. As long as it's nonpartisan, you can hand those out, but we want to make sure we do that 100 feet away from the entrance as well. Does that answer your question? Okay, great. Great question. Thank you for helping me clear that up for folks. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about interacting with voters. So when you are interacting with voters, first of all, you want to be proactive and observant, and also consider observing things like social distance, people's personal bubble, um, COVID, flu, RSV, and just people's feelings on election day are things that we do want to consider every single time we interact with somebody. So either during this summer, during the general election, or in the fall during the summer during the primary, and the fall during the general, think about things like people's personal space. But other than that, you want to look for long lines or disruption of the flow of voters. Things were moving pretty smoothly before, and then all of a sudden, it seems like it's pouring out with voters. You might want to consider why that is. If you see folks heading towards the polling place, be friendly, start a conversation. Say, hey, my name is Mason. I'm a nonpartisan election protection volunteer. Did you have any questions or concerns about casting your vote today? You may get something back like, yeah, I actually did. I don't have my physical ID. I use this example a lot. I don't have an ID. Can I still vote? You can check your handy fact sheet and say, absolutely, you can still vote. In New Mexico, you just need to know your address that has to match up with your registration. Your name has to match up with your registration and your date of birth, but nobody's going to ask you for a physical ID. All right. Number one is keeping voters and yourself safe. How do we do that? You have to know your surroundings. I'm always saying, keep your head on a swivel when we go out in public places. Think about what's the current mood at the polling place? How are people coming in and leaving? That flow of voters. Are there co-workers leaving, pedestrians leaving? What is going on? Is anything happening nearby that could be intimidating? Think police presence, protest, maybe just loud engagement between individuals. You want to maintain a safe distance from any type of confrontations, and please do not engage in any verbal and any physical altercations. If you see anything like that, just remove yourself. If somebody tries to engage with you in a verbal or physical way, remove yourself. Do not engage with them. If something doesn't feel right, please report it. And I always say, trust your gut. We are not going to make you stay in a situation that is not safe. If you feel like, hey, things are getting a little out of hand here, I don't feel 100% safe, leave. Just go. You can let us know in the reporting tool, send me a text, or if you have a field captain, just say, hey, I had to leave because I just felt like things weren't being safe. 100% understand. Just make sure you take care of yourself first. All right. So all of our volunteers are going to be reporting these incidents back to the command center. It's going to be staffed by Common Cause employees. And what you're going to be using is a form and a new software that's called Airtable. So a really simple form. But if if you were part of the program last year, it is going to look a little different than it was. I'm going to go over a quick demonstration with you, but let's talk about the information that is going to go on that form. Who is filling it out? You. The polling place where the report occurred, any voter contact information if it's available. We want to do the type of report and the details about the issue, and then photos and photo, video, and audio, and I believe documents as well can be uploaded to this tool. So I'm going to show you that right now. Just have to go ahead and stop the screen share here. And we're going to go ahead and look at our incident reporting tool. I don't think that's the right one. Let me see. There we go. Okay, should say template election protection incident report. You see that? Okay, thumbs up from the Millennium Falcon. All right, so first, volunteer name. You're gonna click add, and all your volunteer names will be in this list. Just go ahead and type your name here. I'm the only one here now, so we'll put Mason Graham. The polling place, 98th and Central Shopping Center. That one gets very busy if you're nearby. Just be prepared. What kind of report is this? A question from a voter, a specific voter has a problem, or a problem with the polling place? Let's do a specific voter has a problem. what kind of issue does the voter have? You can see the form is dynamic based on the issue that you select. And you can also select multiple issues. So they have a problem and a question. For fun, let's say a problem with the polling place as well. So now we have these three different options that showed up based off of what you selected. What kind of issue do they have? Let's do my favorite issue, voter ID. Are they voting in person? I think this is based off of they have a problem. So what's the problem that they have with in-person voting, or the question that they have? Sorry, they have a question about in-person voting. And then the problem at the polling place, let's say they say physical access. So if someone's voting in person, they don't have their voter ID, and they can't get into the building. So voter's name, we'll put it here, voter, their last name, Frank. Let's see what voter's address, their city, their zip code, their phone number. And then when you get down to notes and comments, this is where you want to be as detailed as possible. Frank showed up to the polling place without physical ID and asked if he needs one. I informed that a physical ID was not required in order to vote. Frank went to access the polling place, but there was a 100-foot ladder. Uh-oh, what are we gonna do? So we'll go ahead and choose the voting method. This is in person. We'll take a picture of that ladder. And then does this require escalation? I think so. We want people to take that ladder down so they can get in. We'll go ahead and click submit. And then this is what you'll see. Thank you for submitting the form. You can go ahead and click submit another response. And then you'll be right back. Now, will Airtable accept voice to text functionality? Great question, Christian. So this is something you're going to use on your phone. So anywhere where there is a text box, if you're using like an iPhone or an Android smartphone, you should be able to use the dictation feature just like you would anywhere else. These drop downs, though, I don't use any accessibility tools on my phone, but I think there may be some available if folks do need additional help with accessibility. Now, if you find yourself without internet access, or the tool isn't working, and say, I still want to make sure I can take down these incident reports, there is a physical incident reporting form that we can provide you. We'll send in a package of materials, and then I would request that you print that stuff out so you can fill it out. So you can go ahead and test out the application at any time, but you do need to complete the quiz to get access to it. And then once you complete, all of our volunteers complete the quizzes, we'll start importing them into the to the incident reporting tool, and then you'll see your name in that drop down. Now, we'll get that done within the next couple of months, so you won't have access to it just yet. But when you do and say, hey, I just want to make sure I have this square. Sorry, I said a couple of months, I mean a couple of weeks. You can go ahead in this tool, and if you do things like so you add your name, the polling place, the report, question from voter. So I'm gonna go real quickly. You might just want to put test in here, test, and then you press submit. So that way you can use it like a sandbox. All right. Now, for folks who are going to be our roving monitors, the form looks slightly different. I'm going to speed through this real quick. In this case, it's a checklist. So when you get to your polling place, you'll choose add me again. Which polling place are you at? 98th and Central. And then you're going to go through this checklist. Is there adequate parking? Is there adequate signage? Is it open on time? Is a poll worker present? Curbside polling and signage may be a little bit harder to determine. They might not have signs that say you can vote curbside, but just remember that. disability access. If there are stairs, there should be a handrail. There should also be a ramp. There should also be a handicap parking spot with the accessibility ramp. We will be taking out our 866 R vote signs here soon. So you should see that at the 100-foot line. And outside of that 100 feet, you will see that there's electioneering. Anybody closer than that who's wearing a candidate A or party C shirt, hat, pin, or whatever are, breaking the law. Accessible parking. All of these things are for accessibility, as you can see. You'll click all that, you go down, a lot of things here. So it's a little bit longer of a list, but when you get to the bottom, you click submit once again, and then they have you thank you for submitting the form. Then you go on to your next location, and then you do it all again. All right. We'll stop sharing that and jump back into our slideshow where I am going to go over a few practice scenarios. So let's go ahead and hop in here. All right. So some things that you might come across. Number one, voter suppression is tricky. Now, suppression isn't always intentional. It doesn't always look like somebody trying to keep you from voting or who has a political agenda. Sometimes, most times, it's incidental. There are administrative obstacles. People forget things. They don't know the law 100%. It's human nature. So let's not jump to judging people for if a suppression type of voter suppression did happen, because there are lots of types of voter suppression. So what is that? Providing false or misleading information to voters about their rights or eligibility. Poll workers requiring that you show a physical ID. Poll workers denying you a provisional ballot. This might not be much of an issue these days since we're able to vote anywhere, but if people do want a provisional ballot, they do have a right to one. Voters are not found in the poll books, even though they are sure that they registered. Closing or relocating polling places, inaccessible polling places, not enough poll workers, polling places opening late and closing early. You got to think about all those things. And then, of course, police or ICE presence near polling places. This is huge, especially in a state like ours, where very multicultural and multi-ethnic, different people from communities and backgrounds have different feelings when the police do get involved, especially when they are in their uniform. So we want to make sure that we don't have police presence showing up when it's unnecessary. And I believe that the police themselves, if they do have to engage at a polling place, they usually show up in plainclothes. Now, electioneering is a little bit different. Now, like we mentioned, it is against the law to do this within 100 feet. So if you do see that happening, we must report it in that tool. We are nonpartisan, but we want to be vigilant of when this is occurring, just for respect and caution for our voters and our election workers. Now, if you do decide to go inside the polling place to speak with the judge, to help a voter, or to just use the bathroom, regardless, I would encourage you to cover up any materials that you have that say election protection. Although the program is nonpartisan, and I'll reiterate this, we want to make sure that we honor people's feelings. So you will receive a hat, some buttons, a shirt, and they'll all say election protection. Just take the hat off. If you have an extra shirt or a jacket you can put on over it, that would be excellent. But remember, no electioneering within 100 feet of a polling place. You want to look for the signs and banners. If a line extends beyond 100 feet, so the voting line is huge. People are moving in and out of there, but it's just long. Electioneering cannot happen within 10 feet of that line. So if somebody says, oh, well, they're past the 100-foot line, I can shoot my shot at every voter who's there. We want to make sure that they back up beyond 10 feet of that line. I see a quick question in the chat. Do we say anything to someone electioneering or just report it? Great question, Nancy. So if you do see somebody electioneering, say within that 100-foot line, I would not approach them. Just go ahead and report it. report what they look like, what they're wearing, how long they've been there. And then when we receive it, we receive all of our incident reports back in real time. The Common Cause team at the Incident Command Center will be able to report that to the necessary people to handle that. Now, for same day registration, I see a question from David about same day registration. Do they need ID for same day registration? No, they do not need an ID for same day registration unless it is their first time voting and they've never registered before. So they turn 18 on the Monday before the election. They're ready to register. They're ready to vote. That person does need to bring a physical photo ID with their the address, their name, and a date of birth in which their registration is going to be linked to. However, say they don't have any of that stuff and they still want to register, you could help them go online to the Secretary of State's website and register that way. Then they could go inside and say, I register online. You can only, they don't count the registration at that time online, but they could ask for a provisional ballot. That provisional ballot, I would have to find some more information on how they would count that ballot from someone who didn't have their ID and register on the same day. But if they're in the system, there's a good chance that they're going to get counted. And then all poll monitors need to stay outside of the polling place unless a voter requests your assistance. So in the past, if you've been a volunteer with us, you may have gone inside the polling place to either watch voters or watch the process and voters and other poll watchers. But this year, we have decided that we are not going to be doing that. There are a number of nonpartisan and partisan poll watchers within the polling place already. So we feel like just given the environment, we'll let them do their job and we'll do ours by providing the best information for voters. So let's talk about protecting yourself once again when it comes to intimidation. And I just have a quick disclaimer about this. Forms of voter intimidation, it can vary dramatically based off of where you're from, your political views, your race, your religion, and all these things. All these things I'm going to share with you are based off of some national best practices that we've gathered over the years. But if you are interested in further training on conflict and de-escalation, reach out to us. We have some friends in a program who is doing a de-escalation training, and we can help you get connected with them. So if there is intimidation happening, no matter the scary situation, remember, intimidation is designed to make voters uncomfortable. They want to create confusion among the voting process and ultimately discourage them from voting. So as an election protection volunteer, there's a few things that you can do to change the situation, making voters feel comfortable. Go up to them and say, hey, I just noticed that you were getting bombarded with questions and you look a little frustrated or flustered. Is there anything that I could help you with? And if they give you those questions, you want to clarify on how to vote. Maybe it's their first time and they're not too sure what to expect when they go in. And then, of course, encourage them to stay in line and vote. This is going to be really interesting as the lines get longer and longer. If you see somebody leaving while they're still in line, you might want to ask them, hey, why are you leaving the line today? If there's a family emergency, we want to let them go, but encourage folks to say, hey, I know the line's long, but we want you to vote. So if you stay in the line, we'll make sure that you can do that. Okay. So we've got about 10 minutes left. So what I'm going to do is just 2 of these slides, and I'd like to get a little bit of input from the group. I do see a question from the chat about the previous slide. What if that person continues to intimidate? Ooh. So first of all, when you see intimidation happening, we don't want to approach that person. First, we want to immediately document it in the tool. Like I said, everything is in real time, Jesse. So we'll be able to know that is happening, give a good description of who that person is, and then we'll be able to get somebody who's in the polling place, or if it's physical altercation, somebody who deals with that. If it has to be law enforcement, then we'll get there when we get there. But if you see it continuing and continuing and continuing, really the best thing would be to try to help that voter focus on voting. If it seems like that's not going to happen, just let us handle it on our side. We don't want to put you guys in any situation that's going to become uncomfortable. So let me just go ahead and go through these questions and scenarios real quick. We won't have you put the answers in the chat. So what kind of identification do I need? That's going to be something you're often verbal, written, or physical form of ID. So you're walking up and saying, my name is Mason. I live at 123 Boca Negra Lane, and my birth date is May 15th, 1995. It's not really. And that's all they need. If I'm disabled, can I get help voting? We've already established that voters who have a disability or prefer speaking in a non-English language can receive assistance at the polling place from a friend or a person of their choice. Somebody handed me a political leaflet while I was in line. That's a big no. Electioneering can only happen within 100 feet of a polling place, and it is restricted in New Mexico. So if somebody walked up with a big candidate D sign and said, hey, check this out. What do you think of that? Or it could be even more covert than that. It could be a leaflet that has ballot issues on there that may be on the ballot as well. We don't want that to be happening within 100 feet. Can I wear my political button or shirt when voting? Absolutely not. No political apparel or anything is allowed by anyone on election day in a polling place. Not a voter, not our volunteers, not our poll workers. If you see somebody walking in and they're just decked out in candidate gear or even something small like a little hat that has a donkey on it, they can't wear it and report it. Some slightly uncommon scenarios. I'm not registered. Can I still vote? And here in New Mexico, same-day voter registration is available during early voting and on election day. I was formerly incarcerated on a felony conviction. Am I eligible to vote? Yes. As of last year, formerly incarcerated individuals who have been convicted of a felony are now eligible to register and vote as long as they've been released. All right, so let's hop into our next steps. So after this, in the next couple of days, you will receive an email that will allow you to sign up for a shift and a polling location. It says the shifts are 2 hours long. That is a typo. Our shifts are 3 hours long, and they start from when the polling place opens to when it closes. Like I mentioned, you're not required to stay there any longer than the 3 hours. And if you just want to do one shift, that is totally fine. You'll receive my contact information. It's also at the end of the slide as well. You've been getting a number of emails directly from me. So any email you get from me, you can just directly reply to, and I get it. And then you'll also be receiving some field materials and packets and resources in an email as well. We'll send that out probably a couple days before the election. Then you'll have them digitally on your phone. You can pull them up whenever. Few helpful tips. When you get your shift assignment, let's go ahead and put it on your calendar. If you do need to cancel or switch your shift, I can help you with that. You can give me a call or send me an email or send me a text and say, hey, this is John. I'm not going to be able to make my shift on Saturday at 9 o'clock. What can I do? Or, I'll work with you to make sure that we get you another shift, or if you just need to cancel outright, that's totally fine. Few resources that you should know about: the 866R vote hotline number. If you Google the ACLU Know Your Rights Guide, it's a very helpful I think it's a one-pager that has just some basic information on voting. And of course, you can always visit the Common Cause website, our national website and our state website. You can reach from commoncause.org. Here in New Mexico, the Secretary of State's website has a massive wealth of resources. So those are the 3 links to get to the Secretary of State's website. That last one, nmvote.org, is the shortened URL for the voting and elections page on the Secretary of State's website. I included that one there because when you're interacting with voters and you say, hey, you can actually find this at the Secretary of State's website, you probably want to give them nmvote.org and not sos.nm.gov/voting-and-elections. So some materials you'll receive. You're going to receive a fact sheet, We also have some branded t-shirts, hats, lanyards, and buttons, clipboard, pens, and paper. Since I believe folks on this call are former volunteers, if you have those materials already, perfect, you're ready to go. If not, we'll put out some information so folks can pick up those materials based off of where you are. And then during your shift, you want to make sure you bring your phone. That way you can access the tools online, and then a charger. Especially on the hotter days, the heat tends to drain your battery and overheat. Comfortable clothes and shoes that are going to be appropriate for the weather. Folks in Santa Fe are going to have different weather conditions than folks in Doña Ana, so please dress appropriately. And then any comfort items. You might be there when not a lot is going on. So think a book, snacks, waters, or a drink, and a chair. Me personally, I'm a big music person. That's my comfort item. So I might bring like headphones if I was being a volunteer. If that's you, I would encourage maybe just having one headphone in so it doesn't seem like you're completely tuned out or you can't hear somebody who's trying to like wave you down. So quick recap in our last 1 minute. So election day this year is going to be on Tuesday, June 4th for the primary election, and then Tuesday, November 5th for a general election. Early voting has already started until Saturday, June 1st. And then the polling hours during early voting, I believe between now and Saturday is 5:30 at the clerk's annex. But during starting the expanded early voting from June 1st to election day, it's regular voting hours. So I believe it's like 7 to 7. You don't want to forget your charger, your clothes, and your comfort items on any of these election days. So that gets us to the end of our training today. So what you should know by now is what election protection is, what your role is as a volunteer, answers to any common voter questions, how to protect voters and yourself, how to escalate voter issues at the polls, and who to ask for help. Now, remember, you can always contact the hotline if you need immediate assistance or if you have any questions. Election protection is nonpartisan, and our coalition aims to ensure every eligible voter can cast a ballot. You're our eyes and ears. So make sure you're respectful of all voters, poll workers, and other volunteers as well. You might not be the only person out there. Consider bringing PPE, especially when we get into the fall, and those comfort items. And if, when you're in doubt, call the hotline, the 186R vote number. Honestly, if I was a volunteer, I'd probably call the hotline for every voter just to double check. And if that's what you do, feel totally fine. And then we will be in direct contact with you about your shifts and supplies. So after this training today, you will receive an email, and it's going to have you complete this very, very short quiz. It's about 5 questions, but you do need to complete that quiz in order to select a shift. So make sure you look out for that email. And then when you're able to select your shift, you'll be receiving a number of emails from us just to make sure that you're ready. So that brings us a minute after the hour. I did want to do the quiz on the call, but I don't want to hold anybody too late. So just look out for that email from me. If I see that you didn't complete the quiz and you were on this call, you may receive multiple emails or even a call to follow up, because we just want to make sure everyone's credentialed. Once again, my name is Mason Graham. I am the Policy Director for Common Cause New Mexico. That's my email. Anything you receive from us will likely come from me. And then that is my phone number. Like I mentioned, it's my cell. Please take it down and do not hesitate to send me a text or a call. I will always be available to our incredible volunteers. And thank you so much for taking an hour and 2 minutes with me today. And we look forward to seeing you guys all at the election. Thank you.